My name is Smith-Levin, and I was a Scientologist for about 29 years.
My name is Claire Headley, and I was a Scientologist for 30 years.
My name is Mark Headley, and I was a Scientologist for 25 years.
My name is Mike Rinder. I was a Scientologist for 46 years.
What's the Church of Scientology so afraid of?
This is SPTV.
Well, I messed up the intro. I had so much attention on the fact that my earplugs had come unconnected from the computer. Welcome back, everyone, for some SPTV. All right, well, let me at least take a second to make sure the mic is still connected. The mic is still connected. Welcome, everyone. I have with me Janis Gillham Grady. How's it going, Janis?
It's going great. Thanks
Excellent.
for inviting me back.
Well, of course. So before we get going here, I want to show everybody where to find your YouTube channel. So what we have here is our Scientology stories, Peeling the Onion with Mark Fisher and Janis Gillham Grady. You guys just got started this week. You're up to 1,400 subscribers. You guys have 2 videos there.
Yeah.
We're going to explain, in our chat today, who you are, who Mark Fisher is. Because Janis, I published an interview with you just the other day on my channel, but the internet is a very, very large place. And it's always safe to assume that everyone you're talking to today, you've never spoken to before. I also want to show everyone your books on Amazon here. So Commodore's Messenger, A Child Adrift in the Scientology Sea Organization. That was the first book, right?
Yes.
And then book 2 here is Commodore's Messenger, book 2, Riding Out the Storms with L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, so let's go back to normal view here. So for everyone watching, sometimes introducing you is difficult because you're so many things in the world of Scientology. You were someone who spent arguably the most amount of time working directly with L. Ron Hubbard than anyone else alive today. I think you mentioned there's one other person.
There's 2 other people. Yeah.
2 other people.
Yes.
Your mother, Yvonne Gillham, was responsible for creating the Celebrity Center that is pretty much what most people associate with Scientology these days, is the Celebrity Center in Los Angeles.
And a lot of people will know her as Yvonne Jantz, married to Heber.
Right. And your father was instrumental in, I want to say, the growth of Scientology in Australia. But is that do I have it right?
And America.
And America.
200 people would show up for his personal efficiency lectures on Scientology.
Wow.
He toured all the missions and orgs in the U.S. and he'd tour Mexico. Incredible.
So I'm still over here frantically trying to get my freaking earbuds here to connect. So, wow, what an annoying thing to have to deal with here. I'll figure it out probably while we're doing the Q&A here.
Okay.
I'll put these bad. All right, so let's see. Let's talk about the YouTube channel real quick. You and Mark Fisher, you guys have worked together professionally for a long time. What made you start this channel?
We've been watching other people's interviews, and we read different blogs and stuff like that. And we have a lot of history prior to 1990 that nobody ever hears about. And so that's when we were like, we can answer people's questions on that, and we can tell those stories. And of course, I've written the 2 books which cover from 1953 of Scientology starting in Australia and going all the way through to the end of book 2 finishes when we left the Apollo and we moved to America. So now I'm working on book 3, which starts with coming to America. But I've known Mark since probably 76, and then worked with him since around 1980. And then interestingly enough, Paul and I were standing right next to Mark the night we decided to escape. And Mark escaped the same time, and we had no clue. But then he came back and found out we had left, at which point he was like, oh, I'm not crazy if Paul and Janice left. So then he left, and I heard about it. So I called his in-laws in San Diego, and he answered the phone. And we've worked together on the outside ever since.
I'm so glad that you guys are going to focus on an earlier era of Scientology, even from a personal level, because it's hard for me to retain information if I don't know the names, the faces, and the posts of the people involved, right? Like once I have a certain framework in place, I have an almost photographic memory of certain things once I have a framework upon which to hang information.
Okay.
And even though I've heard stories from, the late the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's almost impossible for me to retain that information. If I hear a name and I don't have a face to go with it, forget it. It's
Right.
going to go in one ear. I will not retain the story. It wasn't until editing the interview that I did with you, going through it again slowly, that I was like, oh my God, I'm starting to get a framework for which I'm going to be able to like remember these stories and these anecdotes instead of it just all being this vague cloud. Like, yes, there was a time period before 1993. I don't know anything about it.
Right.
And so, the amount of experience that you have personally working with L. Ron Hubbard, Mark Fisher has an equal amount of time personally working directly with David Miscavige.
Yeah, he worked with David for 6 years as his assistant. Yeah.
I was literally talking with Mark this morning to try to set up this live stream on your guys' channel. For all you viewing, we were going to do a simultaneous stream on this channel and also on Janice's channel to get their watch hours up to the threshold for monetization. But YouTube takes like 24 hours to approve a live stream request on a new channel. And I was just talking to Mark and I go, Mark, I just realized I've known you for a long time. I don't know a damn thing about your Scientology story. And he goes, I know. So I'm super excited to start hearing these stories. Okay. So what I wanted to do was, I know you've done a bunch of interviews. You've been on people's channels. I don't think you've ever done a live Q&A before. Have you?
No, I haven't. This is the first.
Yeah. And so this will be a great opportunity for the viewers to ask specific questions about the experience of working directly with L. Ron Hubbard. Let's give them the bullet points. How old were you when you went to the flagship Apollo, ostensibly to meet your mother, but by the time you got there, she wasn't there anymore? How old were you when you started working for L. Ron Hubbard on the ship Apollo?
Okay. I was 11 years old when I showed up on the ship with my brother and sister. They were 13 and 14, and we had no mother there. So she eventually came back because she was off sailing with Hubbard. And so Mary Sue Hubbard was our legal guardian until our mother got back. Then she, of course, got sent off on more missions. So we were left on our own. And then finally in May, we sailed to Marseille, France, and Hubbard came aboard at that point. And I just turned 12 years old, and he needed someone to run around the ship and find people for him. So his son, Quentin, was selected to do that. And Quentin did like 3 hours. And then I was the director of communications. So I was told I need to go up there. And that was my first experience as a messenger. And then as the director of communications, I would run messages for him. And then as I got new messengers, young people on the ship, I assigned them to doing it. And then he called for me to come back. And then I stuck with him for 6 hours a day, nearly every single day for the next 11 years.
Incredible. Okay, so let's start tackling some of these things. So CO Bilf wants to know, do you have any stories or recollections of Maureen Brigatti or Carl Helt?
I know the names, but couldn't tell you any stories on them.
Where would you know the names from? Do you think they were Sea Org members?
Carl Helt, I believe, was. I don't know on Maureen. But you got to remember, being a messenger and then also being in management, a lot of names go past me. And I even did a whole project for Hubbard of prospective executive resources. And so I studied a lot of files of people and new names and no faces.
Yeah. You know, the other thing about the names of women is that people get married and divorced so frequently in the Sea Org, you never quite know who you're talking about.
Well, that's why I kept my maiden name in my name. So
Oh.
people knew that I'm the same person.
That's great. That is great. Okay, let's look at another one here. Asher Coben. When was the last time you personally saw L. Ron Hubbard?
I last saw him in December 1979. I'd been working for him at a location in Hemet that we called X. And then I went on leave to Australia for 4 weeks. When I came back, the messengers who did international management had been transferred to Los Angeles for a while, and Hubbard was still at X. So I got to Los Angeles and stayed there and did not go back up to Hemet until after Hubbard had left with Pat and Annie.
Was that upsetting for you?
No, not at all. You know, it had been determined beforehand that Pat and Annie would go with him if he left because they were married. And when we were trying to figure out, okay, who's going to go, I was kind of hoping no one looked at me, because if I had to go with Hubbard, then what kind of life would that be? I was young and I just didn't want to go into hiding.
Interesting. So you didn't even want to go?
No, not when he took off.
Was it expected that a time would soon be coming when L. Ron Hubbard was going to disappear?
He's done that before. When we were in Clearwater, we lived in Dunedin, and a reporter was snooping around the place, and he took off to DC with Kimmer and Michael Douglas. And then when he got to La Quinta, which I talked about in my previous interview on our channel, we ended up again with him having to take off from there. And when the GO got raided by the FBI, he took off to Sparks, Nevada, and then he came back. So it was already figured that if something happened security-wise, we already had an escape car and, a suitcase packed up. We always did that.
Wow, of course. And so other than not being disappointed that you weren't the one to go off with Hubbard at that point, when he left at that point, did you have any indication, any idea that you might never see him again?
No, and I actually for a long time hoped I would, because as things started worsening at the Golden Era at the base, and it got crazier and crazier, I always felt that if only I could get a message to him and tell him what was really going on rather than the false reports, I felt he was being fed.
Right.
So I had always hoped that I could get a hold of him so I could stop the decline of what was going on.
Right. There was another question I wanted to ask you about that. Oh, were you disappointed or sad or heartbroken? I'm not sure what the right word would be. Whenever it dawned on you, wow, I might never actually see L. Ron Hubbard again, or was it not that deep?
No, it never dawned on me until I was standing there at the Palladium that he died.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, let's see. Let's tackle another one here. By the way, guys, we're going to do this until 3 p.m. You have a hard stop. You have a hard stop in 45 minutes, Janice?
Close.
Okay. All right, let's see here. Peace Dog. Do you feel Scientology was better under L. Ron Hubbard and it went down the tubes because of David Miscavige? Or is LRH just as bad as David Miscavige?
No, people, there's a lot of, this is a hot potato because there's so much opinion out there. But I would have to say, Mark and I were talking about this, and we were listening to the stories after 1990. And yes, LRH was abusive, but he also let people do their jobs in most cases. And where DM is more sadistic in his abuse. And with Hubbard, you could always sit down and re-explain things to him, and he'd re-look at things, where with DM, it wasn't as easy. And if he decides something, and DM was the type who he would undo a working operation, something that was working well, and he goes, well, this person's doing well over here, maybe they can handle over here. So he destroys one area to try and build up another one.
That really is one of the craziest things about what Miscavige has. I mean, look, there's many crazy things, but some prime examples I can think of. When he took Debbie Cook, the most successful captain of the flag service organization, who, whatever, and took her off of that post just so he could bring her up to int management and essentially make mincemeat out of her. That's just, I just can't think of it's, in my generation, it's like, it's the most obvious example where technically that's a huge violation of L. Ron Hubbard's policy to do something like that, to unmock a working installation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And DM did that a lot. And, and also Hubbard would look at things like, he'd look at right now and he'd go, wait a minute, why is all this disconnection? It's creating all these problems with these families. People are being declared for stupid reasons, and it's destroying the actual organization. And he would look at that and go, well, wait a minute. I wrote a policy letter in, I think it was 68 or 69, doing away with disconnection. And that was because Mary Sue convinced him that all it did was create problems. And so he then got rid of disconnection. Now, maybe later on in the years, an advice, not a policy, but an advice might have come down because there was talk about external influences. But an advice does not override policy. And it's probably concerning one particular thing.
Right.
And that's where the whole disconnection thing has destroyed what could have been a good thing.
Interesting. All right, here is a question. Matthew O'Brien, did Hubbard model the Commodore's messengers on the Hitler Youth? Wikipedia says that he did. What do you think?
Probably. He did not talk about the Hitler stuff earlier, but when we were forming and being messengers, and at first we just started running messages. There was no, it was just help because it was a big ship and it would save him time going up and down all the decks and so forth. And it was easier just to have little feet run everywhere for him. So that's how it started out. But then it was interesting. And I hadn't thought of it really until I got to La Quinta in 77. And LRH Hubbard had written to the Guardian's office wanting them to get some orphans around the age of 10 years old that could be adopted and trained as messengers, because that way they're not with parents who would be altering their minds one way, but this way they could be groomed with the Scientology thoughts.
L. Ron Hubbard instructed management to adopt the Guardian's office to adopt orphans to work for Scientology.
Yes, and come and train as messengers.
Oh my God.
And that's when it kind of was striking me as to, have I been massaged into this and formed into this?
Lil Orphan Janice.
Well, he used to call me a waif.
A waif?
A waif, yeah.
Isn't that just like a really tiny person, or?
Yeah, it's like being an orphan.
It is? I got to look it up now. Define waif.
Well, that's what I always thought.
neglected or abandoned person, especially a child. Oh my God. Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's nuts. I think you've actually told me that before. I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
Okay, but when you started answering this question in the first place, you said he didn't mention the Hitler stuff earlier. Did he later?
Well, I've only heard that from others. I have not heard him say that to me. But I thought of it with that whole adoption program. It is like the Hitler Youth Program.
Wow. They literally wouldn't have any parents other than L. Ron Hubbard.
Well, that's how I was.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I had parents, but they were both in America. My dad, I didn't see for 5 years. And my mom, I probably saw her 3 times in 5 years or in 8 years. No, 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take the next one here. The Scrapbooker. Hi, Aaron and Janice. I'm currently reading your first book and can't wait to read the second one. What year did the Royal Scotsman become the Apollo?
That would have been 1969 when we were in Corfu, Greece, before we got kicked out.
Okay. Okay, from Carla Forbes. Question: can you give examples of some of the messages you had to deliver from LRH?
Yeah. I mean, you got to imagine we're on a ship, okay? So sometimes our messages would be to the ship's captain, to the first mate, to the bridge if we're at sea. So it could be if the ship's rocking, well, our message to the bridge would be tell them to get back on course or to get out of the trough. And, you know, and that sometimes it'll be many messages back and forth until the ship settled down, or we have to go and find out, go look in the radar and see if there's any ships around and go back and tell them what we saw. Or we'd go down to management and ask them questions about different Scientology organizations, or we'd go to the ethics officer and ask him what he's doing on inspections around the ship. It was a variety of anything that our messages could be on.
So it's funny. I tend to think of like really petty, vindictive examples that would be more appropriate from David Miscavige. But like, would LRH ever send you like, go up to Joe Smith and tell him to go F himself and then spit on him?
No. He never told me to go spit on anybody.
Okay,
But
forget the spitting. Forget the spitting. Just go tell him this guy's he's a piece of crap.
no,
Okay.
no. But there was the message runs. There was a Dan Albach who was the LRH audio visual in charge. And he was a fantastic musician. And also he did a lot of the editing of the LRH lectures. And Dan would be on a roller coaster in his relationship with Hubbard. Sometimes he would be praised for the work he's done. Sometimes he'd be in trouble for it. And he actually was given Karkan status.
There's nothing like kicking yourself out of your own live stream.
Is that what you did?
Go ahead.
Anyway, so Dan had gotten Karkan status, which is 10 lives. And then he did something that Hubbard got really mad about. And I don't even remember what it was. But I did a whole series of message runs down to Dan, and each run was to take a life away from him. So, and it was like, yeah, the guy just got awarded 10 lives. And this, whatever it was he did, it ended up with each message run, you've just lost another life.
That's the message. You've just lost another life.
And then I'd go back up. Okay, I told him he just lost another life. And well, go tell him, go ask about blah, blah. And then I go answer that. Well, tell him he just lost a second life. And it was just back and forth telling him he's losing lives.
That's actually really funny. Okay, Andrew Humphrey wants to know, Were there ever any assassination attempts against L. Ron Hubbard?
No.
Okay. Here's one from Catherine Churchill. Question, Janice, you said L. Ron Hubbard was not referred to as source prior to his motorcycle accident. Then things started to change. I wonder if he had a brain injury. Is that actually what you said?
Yes. Well, after he had the motorbike accident, that's when I started noticing the change in him.
Mm.
And because before that, he was founder, and he always said that the technology was already there, and he just founded it and put it in a workable system. But then when he was recovering from this motorbike accident injury, as he was slowly getting better, he decided to send out the source missions. And that's when he never referred to himself anymore as founder. He was source.
Mm.
And I don't think there was brain injury, but, he messed up his shoulder really bad and cracked some ribs. He had his camera bag under his arm, and that went in. And that's a whole nother story. That I'll tell the story of that motorbike accident and what messengers went through in trying to help him heal from it. It was a nightmare.
Kim Wiseman wants to know, how old was he when the accident happened?
Oh, wow.
If you can remember the year, I can help you with the math. I grew up in a cult, but I can use a calculator.
Yeah, it was 73.
73. So minus 11. So he was 62.
Yeah.
It's funny. That doesn't sound very old to me.
That's younger than what I am.
Yeah. So he messed up his shoulder, huh? Was it like dislocated?
No, bro. He broke his shoulder.
Yikes.
And I'll tell the story another time.
Okay. All right. More to come. Okay. Vanessa Schulze. Hello from Germany, the ultimate SP country.
Yeah.
I loved the podcasts you did. Will there be any more? Are there any info you want to tell but couldn't? SPTV, keep on fighting. Love all your shows. Maybe Vanessa didn't catch the beginning where Janice now has her own YouTube channel, which you can find a link to in the description down below. So in other words, you're going to be getting endless amounts of stories from Janice and Mark Fisher.
Yeah.
But let's see. Let's break this question down a little bit. Will there be any more? Yes. Is there any information you wanted to tell but couldn't? I'm not sure exactly what that refers to, but does anything come to mind that you think answers this question?
No, I mean, if I was inside Scientology, there'd be stuff I wouldn't want to tell, but I've been out for over 30 years, so they have no hold on me.
Yeah. And also you're telling everything in your books.
Yeah, most of it's already in my books.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for the super chat, Vanessa Schulze. Let's see. Next one here is Chris OC. Hi, Janice and Aaron. Do either one of you know whatever happened to Lauren Hollander? She was that little girl in the Golden Age of Tech videos doing the TRs and metering demos. I remember those. I asked Mike last week and he did not know.
You know what? That was after my time.
Yeah. So I know who you're talking about, but I only know her from those videos. I've never known or met Lauren Hollander. I don't even know if she's still in Scientology, but maybe she watches SPTV. And Lauren, if you're out there, email me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com. I want to hear all about what went into the making of those Golden Age of Tech videos. Okay, here's a funny one. Brisby Tales. Her accent reminds me of Rinder a bit.
That's because we're both Aussies.
That's right. People have a hard time placing Mike's accent because it's not like purely Australian. How much of your life did you spend in Australia?
10 years. I just turned 10 when we left. And then I spent about 1.5 years in England. And then I was on the ship for 8 years. And that was very international. And then from then I've been in the US for 46 years. So my accent, like Mike's, is very mixed up.
I think it's interesting that you were only in Australia for the first 10 years of your life, and then you still retain part of the accent.
Yeah. But when I go down there, they call me a Yank.
Oh, because you don't sound Australian enough.
No, I sound American.
Huh. Okay, let's see. We've got the next one here. Calico 26. Janice, was LRH ever interested in other women besides Mary Sue, either before or after Operation Snow White?
I covered in my book where I was not there, but it was told to me by several other crew members from the Avon River, where my mother was, that Hubbard had hit on her several times. So, but she never had an affair with him or anything like that. And since 1968, when I was around Hubbard, he did not have affairs with any other women. He was on the ship. Mary Sue was on the ship. They had cabins right next to each other, and they pretty much just went between the same two decks. And there was messengers with Hubbard pretty much 24 hours a day.
Okay. All right. Mac D. Oh, crap. I just undid it. Shoot. That was a good question. Mac D, throw your question up. You might have had Mac D, throw your question up as a regular comment, and I'm going to try to find it and select it and get it up there. Okay. In the meantime, Asher Coben, Mac D, it was the question about whether the people who were like wore the professional seaman hat, the navigator and everything, were Scientologists or non-Scientologists. But I want to wait till we have the super chat because I like having the question on the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
Answering it. Okay. So Janice, do you have any LRH documents signed with a ML? Much love.
I don't have any documents anymore. When I left, they actually I had an off-base storage unit with a safe. And when I escaped and I came back to get my stuff from the storage, they'd broken into my storage unit and taken all my birthday cards signed by him and anything that connected me to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ask for any of it back?
They told me I could get it back when I got back in good standing.
Wow.
And I've never gotten back in good standing. So
they said you could have your personal effects. Was it just the personal effects that were associated with L. Ron Hubbard, or was it like all
photographs? All my photograph collection that I have now, I pretty much created from friends and family.
Incredible. Did L. Ron Hubbard sign his letters ML, much love, or was that a Miscavige thing?
No, that was a messenger thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. You learn something every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Andy Fabulous wants to know, why do people always ask if Scientology was better under LRH than Miscavige? Both were abusive in their own way, and isn't a scam under either one? It is still a cult that's destructive. I think it's a sensible question that people want to know.
You know what? It's actually, whether it's a scam or not, that's a hot potato again. And I think that's a matter of opinion for each person as to whether they feel it worked for them or they didn't feel it worked for them. That's not for me to be pushing on other people.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so I'm not
But you know what I will say?
Yeah.
On the difference between Miscavige and LRH. LRH was down on fundraising. He was like, do not fundraise. And DM is big on the fundraising with no exchange, where Hubbard was, you need to exchange, and he always pushed delivery. If money came in, he pushed getting delivery done in order to not owe to the public. You have to exchange.
And what was his reason for not wanting people to do fundraising?
because you can't exchange, and it had nothing to do with Scientology. It's just you're just taking people's money. And he was very down on that. There's policies that you do not do fundraising.
Yep. Okay, I found Mac D's question. Mac D, question: were the people running Apollo, like navigators and mechanics, also Scientologists, or were they private contractors?
Okay, when the Sea Project first started out, there were engineers who were professional engineers, not Scientologists. And then slowly they got replaced by Sea Org members coming in that are Scientologists. And then Captain Bill was our navigator, or Hubbard. And we did once, when we were in Safi in Morocco, there was a Finnish family who was sailing around the world on their little yacht. And we ended up hiring them, and the dad came on as our navigator.
Wow. Did he become a Scientologist eventually?
No.
Wow. I wonder what made him want to take that job. Wild. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not totally sure what this next question means, but let's figure it out. Ragdoll Ralph, what do you think the biggest reason for his success? I don't know what that means. What do you think it means?
Well, Hubbard actually expanded Scientology over DM, who has made it smaller.
Okay. Yeah. Why do you think Scientology expanded under L. Ron Hubbard's leadership?
He was very big on marketing. And and he also pushed for Thursday 2:00 stats.
I mean, is it fair to say he was at least inclined to make Scientology as horrible as it could be, whereas Miscavige pretty much seems dedicated to making it as horrible as it can be.
You know what? DM is not a Scientologist per what one would expect.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so here we go. Lena on me always, just for giggles. The Scientology Network commercial just came on my TV with Miscavige as I was listening to you both. Nice. Okay, Silver Spoon question. Describe a couple of your fair game experiences. All right, well, you only get one, Silver Spoon. Janice, what's a fair game experience that you had?
Well, we had the PIs. We have gone through 2 PIs working for us in our mortgage company here in Las Vegas. And who else knows who my paid friends are? You know, we kind of suspect certain friends and wonder. And I have had different things happen. You know, I sell on Amazon and I get a notice suspending me. And I'm like, Amazon then can't give me evidence of the complaint. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And it's like 2 months later and 41 pages of back and forth. I'm still trying to fight being suspended. And no one's giving you any information from Amazon. And I don't even know if Scientology is behind it. But of course that goes through my head. Yeah, and so I'm like, how do I handle this? I wrote to Jeff Bezos, and he sent it to an executive who investigated, calls me back and said, I've investigated this and your suspension still stands. And I'm like, well, you obviously didn't do your investigation as requested by Jeff. And I said, you go back and you look at everything. And then he comes back and I've never been suspended since.
There you go.
But
you
don't know where something like that comes from, but you suspect.
Yeah. And you know, for me, the best example of fair game is just them, you know, doing high production value interviews with my wife's family members and some Sea Org members who used to at least know who I was. And then creating a website under my own name as aaronsmithlevin.com.
Yeah.
What a horrible person I am.
Yeah, they did do a hate one on me too.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Kylie Dallas wants to know, did LRH ever tell you or anyone else that he had requested psychiatric care? This was back in, I think, 1948 or 1947. Or did that information leak later after his death? This came from his VA file, his service file. Do you know what this is referring to, Janice? Because I did a video about it recently.
Yeah, no.
There was a letter in L. Ron Hubbard's service file where he had written a letter to the VA. This was in, I think, about 2.5 years before Dianetics was published, basically begging for psychiatric care, specifically psychoanalysis to handle his depression. And it might have even had some suicidal ideation in that letter. Anyway, you guys weren't aware of anything like that, were you?
No, that wouldn't have even come up. We weren't into digging into his past. We just dealt with him on a daily basis.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, let's see. John. A rumor around the San Francisco org in the mid-'70s claimed that L. Ron Hubbard insisted that his laundry needed to be washed 7 times. Is that true?
Yes. And it wasn't washed 7 times. It was rinsed 7 times, maybe sometimes even 20 times. It was a nightmare. No matter what clothes you pulled out of the closet for him, he thought it smelled. And then the messengers and the stewards, because the stewards didn't rinse them enough, then all the messengers were down there rinsing his shirts because the stewards didn't handle it. We're now doing it. And it went on and on and on. It was, just terrible.
Wow. It's funny. One thought I have on that is L. Ron Hubbard smoked like a chimney. How in the hell does he know what his clothes smelled like? When you have cigarette smoke up your nose all the time, that has a huge effect on your ability to smell anything. Like, smokers don't even realize how bad they smell because they can't smell it. So the irony of him being like, these clothes, I dare say, they stink.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. There were times where I would just kind of I'm like fishing for an answer as to where a smell has come from, that he's yelling about. And then it'll be, so-and-so was cooking fish, or is coming from the dock from a restaurant, or, it was like, you have to just sometimes pull something out of your hat.
Yeah. Guys, I'm seeing some comments in the live stream about comments or super chats being blocked. Anything that's happening is being done automatically by YouTube. I don't even know how to block or a question or whatever, other than like blocking a person, which I'm not doing. So there you go. Okay, so that was John. Here's Claire Alice. How did anyone know advices? How did anyone know that advices were truly from L. Ron Hubbard? Or was this a discovery as a way to control and mislead by David Miscavige? Great interview. Love Janice. Great guest. Aaron, nice work. Okay.
While LRH was gone with Pat and Annie, he would send down dictation, and there was an office where they would transcribe his dictation, and then the advices would come out from there. And these were not people who would be dreaming up stuff, but it would be answers to reports DM would have sent up. Now, I know that Sarge, who used to do deliveries between LRH's location and us, per Sarge, there were times that DM and Pat would sit in the van and rechange people's reports that were sent to LRH. So, of course, the advices coming back are based off what Pat and Dave changed things to.
Interesting. Okay, so here is one from Bach Buddy. Was Janice in any of the Scientology films that they later had to edit her out of?
I was in a few of them, but they were the ones that they never released.
Oh.
But my husband Paul, they just done a whole film with him as the star, and it was in the can and all ready to go, and then we blew.
Which film? Which film was he in?
I don't remember what it was. Maybe Mark will remember, because then they had to scratch that because Paul's now blowing.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is why Scientology stopped using Scientologists in their films. Okay, so here's a funny one. Rinder says bean, like we say bin. Yes. How have you been?
Yeah, I don't know. Now I've got attention on it.
Well, how do you say it? Say, hey, how have you been?
How have you been?
Been. Okay, yeah. Mike says bean. Okay, the Poln family. Question, Janice, does anyone come to mind that reminds you of Grant Cardone, but from back in your time? Do you know who Grant Cardone is?
Yeah, I've seen his name around. He's some wealthy.
He's one of these fake gurus.
Yeah.
Hey, you can be a billionaire like me. You just got to hustle and buy my course.
Oh, no.
Oh, now you don't know who I'm talking about?
No, I do know who you're talking about, but we didn't have anyone like that.
Got it.
And is this for his own course?
Yeah, he sells, and he's got Cardone University where you can learn how to be a marketer and learn how to hustle, basically. Do you want to learn how to hustle, Janice? For only $2.99. Actually, for you this week, it's free. You can join my course in Cardone University. He's just such a whatever. Okay, so the answer to this one was no. Okay, just Lisa. Janice almost sounds like she's from Brooklyn.
I've had people say that, from Brooklyn, from the Bronx, from Boston.
Gary Jackson Moorhead has an over he'd like to get off his chest. Sorry for taking your stuff, Janice.
Oh, yeah. He's the one that broke into my storage unit.
Is he the one who told you could get it back when you're in good standing?
No, that was Mike Sutter.
Oh.
Yeah. Jackson, you're forgiven.
Oh, boy. Okay, Dora, the Explorer, wants to know, is it possible that you consider it a positive that you got to see so much of the world at such a young age, even though you were working?
Yeah, I had a different life. I don't know what I would have turned out to be like if I'd just grown up in Australia. So I am who I am, and I'm happy with who I am.
Cool. Okay, let's take the next one. Jennifer Horton. Given L. Ron Hubbard's well-documented racism, was it surprising when Tom Cruise adopted his son, Connor, who is black? Connor is black.
Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Okay, so I think I know why someone's making this connection, but I think it's also worth discussing why the connection doesn't exist. So L. Ron Hubbard as an individual was probably standard racist for his time. Like, apparently they had to edit him saying the N-word out of a bunch of lectures and stuff like that. I don't think it's a stretch to say that was pretty common language in the 50s and 60s, correct? I mean, I'm not making an excuse here, but times do change. Okay.
Yes.
L. Ron Hubbard as an individual, there's plenty of things you can point to where you're like, oh, dude, this guy's actually probably racist. I mean, hell, you could just take the fact that he chose to use the word wog as the word for non-Scientologist. He knew damn well that was a racial slur.
Yes.
Like him having spent so much time in Europe and in London, there's no way he did not know that was a racial slur. And he chose to use that as the word for non-Scientologists.
Right.
However, I can say that my experience studying Scientology did not leave me with the impression that any race was any less than any other race, regardless of what he might have said about members of a certain South African tribe. Like, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. Anything L. Ron Hubbard said about South Africans applied in Scientology to white South Africans just as much as it applied to black South Africans. Like he said, actually, did he say something about a black South African's withholds don't read on the e-meter because of their moral code or something. Right? Am I getting that right?
Yes. Well, it's
Okay.
because what does one see? Yes.
So that, but I, and again, I'm probably opening myself up to a lot of criticism here. Even in that statement, he said black South Africans. He didn't say all black people. You go, whoa, Aaron, you're excusing racism. L. Ron Hubbard was probably about standard racist for his time. But if you look at the what Scientology teaches you, which is that we are all immortal spiritual beings. There's no, Thetans don't have races.
Right.
Your body is unimportant. Your heritage is unimportant. Your ethnicity is unimportant in Scientology. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if L. Ron Hubbard as an individual was racist, Scientology as a belief system does not teach racism.
Correct.
So Tom Cruise being a dedicated Scientologist would not just by virtue be racist. It's not... I know Scientologists who were pretty racist, but they didn't get it from Scientology. They got it from their upbringing.
Right. And you know, the LRH secretary, who was the typist, she was a black lady from America. And her husband, he was the trombone player in the Musicians. And there were not a lot, but we did have a few on the ship, and they were treated the same as anybody else.
What was the name? I didn't know there was did you say she was his typist?
Yeah, she was the secretary, and she would transcribe things.
What was her name?
Alethea Taylor.
I've never heard that name before.
Well, she actually got in touch with me over the years, and she showed up for my 50th birthday party where we had a lot of old timers. And she actually was the plant.
No.
Yes. And she was reporting on everybody that showed up at my birthday party. And then a few years later, Lois runs into her at AOLA in LA, and she was back on lines.
Who's Lois?
Lois Riesdorf. She was a messenger with me.
So this woman who was LRH's typist spied on you, but so when she showed up to your birthday and was in touch with you, was she pretending that she was like out of Scientology completely and whatever?
Yes.
Do you think she was specifically sent in to spy on you?
Yes.
Wow.
I've heard from other people too who've been around a long time that one of them was telling me how after he left, he actually was part of a squirrel group for 8 years, reporting on that squirrel group.
Yeah.
So people thought he was part of the group when actually he was reporting the whole time.
Interesting. I see a comment here I just want to address. I grew up in the 50s, and when someone used the N-word, they knew damn well that it was racist. I'm not... It was much more acceptable and common to be racist is what I meant. Not that people didn't think it was racist to use the word. I mean, this is a silly example. This is someone that I know. Well, his name's Bart Zacks. He's still in Scientology. Great guy. He former SEERG member. He was even a security guard at ASI, about my age. Just a really, really sweet, great guy. And he told me, he said he grew up in Florida. And he grew up in Scientology in Florida, various Scientology circles, but not just Scientology circles. And because he grew up around people who use the N-word, he did not actually know. I mean, I know this sounds credible, guys, but I believe Zach when he told me the story, or Bart when he told me the story. He did not know it was a word you weren't supposed to use, or that it was frowned upon, or like it was a bad word. And then he moved to California, and he goes, and me and a bunch of kids were playing soccer. And, we were playing with a black kid too. And I said, hey, pass the ball to and he said the N-word. And everyone's like, what? He goes, I had no idea. Now, again, I know this is, even as I tell this story, I go, how could you not know? I'm just explaining. When you're raised in a culture and the culture is based on racist beliefs and you're a child and I'm using this as an example of, he didn't know that using that language was hugely offensive. And so because that story sort of sticks with me, I just kind of go, back in that day, I mean, are we really debating whether back in the day there were circles where it was totally acceptable to use that word. We're not really debating this, right? I guess we're debating on whether you can call those people truly racist or not. I do think that is racist. It's just that it was more acceptable back then. Anyway, we've spent way too much time talking about this. Okay, moving on to the next question. Jennifer Horton. Oh, no, that's the question. Okay, that's the one we just did. Okay. Annie Kurtz. Did you ever hit a bad storm at sea?
Oh yeah, we hit many, but there was one it was a major hurricane, and I actually tell it in my book. It's the end of my first book, where it's kind of, I feel relief as we're sailing away from the Azores out of the storm. But I mean, it was like watching those deep sea fishing movies, series that they have. It was scary. And going from Hubbard's office to the bridge, you had to go outside. And we are pitching and rolling, and it was like, and I had to go to the bridge many times on a message run. And I remember hanging onto the rail and walking myself up the deck and looking over the side. And if I let go, I would have just slid right into the ocean.
Terrifying.
And the lookout on the flying bridge was tied to the rail, or they would have gone over the side.
It is amazing people didn't die on the Apollo.
I know, it is. It is.
Did anyone die?
What? We had some deaths of old age.
But no, due to accidents. Not due to accidents?
No, not due to accidents. It was amazing. I think the
Incredible.
most that someone lost was 2 fingers.
Oh, is that all? Was it from a rope?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we were docking.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Okay, Lydia Von Stretchclaw. Question. John Atek thought the smell aversion might be linked to a form of epilepsy. Janice, did you see anything which could suggest epilepsy?
No.
Okay.
No. My husband thought it was candida.
Candida? Isn't that when you get like yeast in the mouth? Kind
Yeah.
of thing? Like babies get it?
Or like a yeast infection of some sort.
Huh. Does that affect? Actually, here is a comment that sort of on this subject, which Anon, perfume was forbidden. This is what cracks me up at him saying, my clothes still smell. What do they smell like, Ron? You? Do they smell like your stinky ass? That's what you're complaining about? You're the one who, you don't want any sense added to this stuff, and you're complaining your clothes still smell like you? Wait, then what were you guys cleaning? It's not soap that was forbidden. It was just scented soap.
Yeah, the scented soap was forbidden. Perfume was forbidden, except his daughter Diana would always just spray it all over her.
She would?
Oh, yeah. She was the only person that would not comply with that order of no perfume.
Would she get in trouble for it?
Nope.
Really?
Yep. Never got in trouble for it.
Wow. Okay, I know we're coming up on our time here. Here's just a few more. Asher Coben. Any chance L. Ron Hubbard's 1982 Bluebird motorhome still exists?
I don't know, but the way that they've been rebuying LRH's other homes and stuff, I would say yes, it probably still does.
But I remember
somebody.
There's someone who knows, either JB, either John Brousseau knows this, or Mike. I've heard an answer to this question. I don't want to misremember it. I feel like the answer is yes, it does still exist, but I could easily just be misremembering this story. Okay, Matt Hawkins. Does Janice still consider herself a Scientologist?
No.
When you left the Sea Org,
Yeah.
when you and your husband blew, did you ever spend any time as sort of an independent Scientologist, free zone, whatever?
No. I just associate with everybody. I have no, I'm not selective on whether they're a believer or not a believer. When I first left, having grown up in it, I didn't want to ruin my eternity, and I had become, I would have to say I used Scientology as a crutch to get through life in the Sea Org. I used auditing as a crutch because I hated my boss. well, hated is a strong word, but I disliked him. And I just wait to get in the session to talk about him. But and I didn't, and when I was going to leave, I was like, how am I going to get along in life without my daily sessions? And that's when I realized it had become a crutch. And now that I was going out into the real world, all I could depend on was myself and just have to constantly step out of my comfort zone. And that's why my YouTube channel, we call it Peeling the Onion, because it comes off in layers of your independency of Scientology technology.
Absolutely. Okay. We're going to wrap it up with, Jackson says, when I left in 97, the Bluebird bus was still up there at Bonneview with the other Hubbard cars. I used to walk through it often. Well, then it's definitely still there. Believe me, they ain't destroying that thing. And the very last one, and we'll wrap it up. Andrew Hogg says, I'm going to New York City in a few weeks. Is there any way the Aftermath Foundation can send me cards to put on the street close to the org? Andrew, what you want to do here, send an email to volunteer@theaftermathfoundation.org. Give your mailing address and request business cards, and they will be sent out to you promptly and forthwith. All right, so let me hide this one. All right, everyone. So this has been Janis Gillham Grady. Subscribe to her YouTube channel, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. There's a link to it in the description down below, and you're going to get an unbelievable amount of stories from Janice and Mark Fisher about L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige, the one of the newest additions to the SP TV network. And I can't wait. It's going to be fantastic. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who watches until the very end, and we will talk to you soon.
Hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk more with you later. Thank you.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.